And we are now recording. So welcome to the webinar, How to Ensure Mentoring Meets Their Needs. And so it's all about, what do you expect mentoring to achieve? What do you hope your mentorees will gain? And do you know what they want? And even more importantly, what they need from mentoring. And in this webinar, I'll be sharing techniques for discovering the issues you really need mentoring to address if it's to produce the outcomes you want. The simple tool we'll use will open up a wealth of information that will sharpen the focus of your mentoring and increase the success of your participants and your program. In fact, you're going to learn how to analyse the needs of participants. You're going to, this technique will allow you to gain your stakeholder buy-in, which you'll see is very important, and it will help identify critical issues that will impact on outcomes. And there are many reasons for running mentoring programs, but too frequently they're introduced without the critical foundation of this needs analysis. Mentoring has gained such popularity that it's just assumed that mentoring will be beneficial. But to quote Abraham Maslow, if the only tool you have is a hammer, it's tempting to treat everything as if it were a nail. And although you and I know that mentoring is a very effective tool, we need to be sure that it's the right one for the job, otherwise it may fail. And the truth is, most situations in which mentoring is used are very complex. There are multiple factors impacting on the situation, and we're trying to change it. So if we want to get the best possible outcomes, we need to be very clear about what we want to achieve and why. These days, there's tight funding and decisions, and limited resources means that we must be able to show that mentoring will make a difference to those important outcomes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anne Rolfe of Mentoring Works, and I have a background in adult learning and career development. 2 decades ago, I began to focus on mentoring as the key strategy for people who want to progress their careers. My website, mentoringworks.com, is a central point for resources that are used right around the world to develop and support mentoring. On the website, you'll find my blog, where I've posted an article with some references that you can access after the webinar. And if you do look down in the chat window, I did post there a link that you can use. There are some very useful models and handouts that you can download. You don't need them for this webinar, but I want you to have them after the webinar to refer to. I'll be referring to them during the webinar. In terms of background, mentoring is something that's very widely used, and some of the mentoring programs I've been involved in the recent years are coming up on your screen now. I was involved in a program called Safe Business is Good Business, and this program helped to make over 300 workplaces in the building industry safer for people to go to work and go home to their families at the end of the day. Make them safer by linking mentors in large organisations with smaller businesses that mightn't have safety specialists on board. I've also been involved in programs for women in small business to increase the profitability and sustainability of those businesses. Helping with power utilities, recruiting and training apprentices, keeping them safe on the job because they literally climbed those poles that you could see, and also to help them complete their apprenticeship. I've done a lot of mentoring programs, largely for young graduates, looking at their career and leadership, and also developing the leadership potential of the mentors themselves that were involved with those young professionals. And a couple of years ago, I was involved in a program for highly technical specialists, and that program was aimed at keeping our our skies safer right around Australia. And some of the programs I'm most proud of are the ones I've been involved with for our Indigenous people in Australia, our Aboriginal people, where I've worked with Aboriginal professionals in their leadership and their professional development, and that's aimed at equity and also client service. So just to show you the breadth of programs that mentoring is used for, and you'll have the opportunity to talk about the sorts of programs you're aiming at or being involved in as we go through today. And if you want to say something about that as we go, do feel free to type in your questions or in the question or comment box just what you're doing with mentoring. I'll have a more specific question for you very shortly. Some of you will be familiar, and if you've been on my webinars before, you will have seen this model. I call this the 4P model because it talks about how we plan mentoring, how we promote mentoring, how we prepare participants, and the program of support that needs to be provided. This model is on the website page. I put the link in earlier. You don't need it right now, but just know it's there. If you don't have a full-size copy for yourself, please go after the webinar and download that. The area that we'll be focusing on today is the one I've circled. So it's all about, in our planning phase of our mentoring strategy, identifying strategic objectives, analysing the needs of the target group, and engaging stakeholders. So enough from me for the moment. I'm going to pause for breath, and I'm actually going to launch a poll. So what you'll see coming up on your screen is you'll have a choice of 3. In fact, you can choose more than 1 response. I'm really curious to know, at the present time, are you currently running a mentoring program? Are you planning a mentoring program? And you might be doing both, so you can tick both if you want. Or are you simply here to explore a general interest in mentoring? So choose 1 or more of those responses. If none of those fit, please type something in the question comment box for me. And interested in your responses here. It's always good to know what people are doing online. Okay, most of you have picked a response now. So I'm going to just give you a few seconds more. Take a quick sip of my cup of tea here to keep the vocal cords lubricated. Okay, I think just about everyone has voted. So I'm going to close that poll and share the results with you. Okay, and what you should be seeing on your screen now is we've got kind of 50% of people are currently running mentoring programs. And from you, I think you'll get great benefit from this webinar because it'll be kind of a benchmarking, we're always looking for ways to improve our mentoring programs. So this will be useful to you. I'll also be looking for your input as we go through, any comments that you might have to share with the rest of the audience as we go through will be highly valued, because one of the reasons I run these webinars is so you can hear not only from me but from your colleagues right around the world. So and I didn't mention, but if you want to put in a comment or a question at any time, and you don't want me to mention your name, you want to, sort of do an anonymous comment or question, that's fine. Just type the letters ANON in front of your question or comment, and I'll simply read out the comment or question and respond, but not mention who it's from. But this is from Leanne, and she says, we're planning a mentor program at several levels, managers and executive level. So thanks for sharing that. And Leanne, you're asking me a question that a lot of people asked, not within the scope, I think, today. Leanne's asking this common question that comes up: do you see a difference between mentoring and coaching? So the short answer is yes, I do, but there are many, many similarities as well. So that's probably a topic for another webinar, and one that we may well do do later on this year. So thanks for the question, Leanne. Sorry, it's just a short answer this time. You might tell I'm talking very quickly because I don't want to run out of time, and we do get a lot of questions on this webinar. Okay, Bruce is saying involved in mentoring with students, post-secondary students, professionals, newcomer professionals, and Aboriginal students and professionals here in Calgary. Thanks for sharing that, Bruce. Okay. Catherine's mentioning that she can't see the other participants' names or locations. Is that the case? Yes. This on GoToWebinar, which is a Citrix program that we're using, it doesn't show other people's names or locations. But I did read some of them out right at the beginning. We do have people on the line from memory, Argentina. We have a large contingent from Canada. We have many from Australia, some from New Zealand, and some from the US. I noticed too we have registrants from Nigeria, Singapore, Thailand, the UK and Croatia. So quite a few locations around the world. So thanks for that question. All right, to move on now. So you may or may not have this this diagram downloaded. Don't worry if you don't. Stay with us on the webinar. Get it later. It's a very, very useful model for planning your mentoring strategy, and one that underpins all of the work that I do and most of the webinars that I share. So if you download that, you'll have it for future reference. So let me close that, hide that from you so you're seeing that diagram again. Just before I move on to the next one, which again, so hopefully you're seeing now on your screen coming up a diagram that says specify objectives, because there are many reasons to run mentoring programs, and I'd like you to think about yours. And I'll ask you to type it in shortly. You may be used to prioritizing the benefits for people involved in mentoring, but in this webinar, I want you to look at the bigger picture just for the moment. No matter what type of organisation you represent, and I should mention I work mainly in corporate Australia, though I do work with universities as well, and I know there are a lot of people in universities on the line on this webinar. So if I sort of mention company or organisation, know that this all applies equally to not-for-profit organisations, to university. The terminology might be a little bit different, but it's still very much applicable. So where I'm saying organisational needs, this still means the needs of your university, the needs of your government agency or not-for-profit, as much as it might mean the organisational needs of a company or some other sort of identity. So what I'm saying is, while we're often focusing on the needs and the benefits to the individual, take a step back, look at the bigger picture. Because no matter what type of organisation you represent, mentoring exists to meet its needs too. To be worthwhile, mentoring must deliver value for the organisation as well as benefits for the individuals. I'm coming back to this model now shortly, but I just want to give you some examples of that top level from the organisational perspective. So here are some examples of programs I've worked with showing you the organisational need and the strategic value of the mentoring program. So here you can see the organisational need that drove the mentoring program was the desire for employee engagement, and the strategic value of that mentoring program was to attract, retain and develop people and indeed increase productivity. Here's another example, knowledge management. In many places of the world, we have an ageing workforce, and as people retire, or even not due to age, leave an organisation, they take a huge amount of tacit knowledge with them. So we want the strategic value of mentoring may be to prevent the loss of that tacit and implicit information that goes with employees when they leave an organisation, and transfer it to the heads of people who stay. Mentoring is also often used for skills development, and the strategic value of that is to improve the capability not only of the individuals but also the organisation. Mentoring is widely used for succession planning to ensure there's a pipeline of leadership, talent for the future. And this is one of the hot issues at the moment for organisations. We're looking at the leadership pipeline and making sure we have people ready to take that next step. Again, often related to attrition at the top, through ageing population or other ideas. And a final example, this is by no means the end of the use of mentoring or the organisational needs. There are many, many more. I'm going to ask you in a moment for some of yours. But again, an area where I work a great deal is this area of diversity and equity. And for some organisations, it's a matter of compliance. So there might be legislation, certainly here in Australia, there are rules and regulations that govern organisations requiring compliance in the field of diversity and equity. That may or may not be the case where you are. But on a brighter note, the more enlightened organisations or senior people are recognising that when you increase diversity, when you have equity strategies in place, you actually improve organisational performance. So there's a strategic value there. So we'll be working through this model and some of the examples, or at least one of the examples here today, with a case study that I'll be sharing with you. Perhaps you'd like to share why, so start typing now. From the organisational perspective, not so much the individual now, why are you running a mentoring program or planning a mentoring program? Think about the organisational needs. Even if it's a university or not-for-profit, there's still an organisational need that's driving this, as well as the individual benefits. What might that organisational need be? And or what strategic value does the mentoring you offer or the mentoring you're planning, what strategic value does that actually contribute? For example, I know at least one university on the line is involved in planning a program for STEM. So science, technology, engineering and mathematics, I think STEM stands for, correct me if I'm wrong. So aiming at young women in STEM programs, retention of those. So what's yours? Okay, seeing some responses coming in there. I'm going to read them out. So Raymond is saying increased knowledge capacity. Thanks, Raymond. Jackie, there you are. One is quality of student experience and student engagement. Thanks for sharing, Jackie. Leanne saying future leader development, employee development. Thank you. Leanne again, succession planning. Okay. Christine is saying in order to increase retention and increase student success at the college level. Thank you. Raymond is saying retain employees when they feel included, I think that means. Yes. And when people feel isolated, you're more likely to lose them. That inclusiveness does contribute to retaining them. Okay, Joanne is saying organisational need is student engagement and success, and the strategic value is attract, retain and develop students. Thank you, Joanne. So Jean-Francois, close the technical knowledge, skills, attitude for service engineers and retain them. Okay, thank you. All of the above. So Melissa's saying all of the mentioned so far. However, for us at the moment, it's knowledge management and succession planning. Thank you. Okay, David's saying support gender diversity initiatives. Okay, Jean-Francois. Close the technical knowledge gap. Okay, sorry, I misread that before. And attitude, okay, and retain them. Thank you. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, Bruce says, especially with our newcomer and Aboriginal professional strategies. Thank you, Bruce. Jennifer is saying at UNE STEM programs, student engagement to retain, develop people, skills development to improve capability. Okay, great. Okay, Joy is saying, we employ 11,000 people, so onboarding mentors help them learn their roles and become more efficient. And there's a lot of research out there, as you may know, Joy, that says onboarding is a very efficient and effective way to bring people up to speed more quickly and make them productive faster. So excellent strategy there. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Raymond is saying we have approximately 1,500 employees retire. Oh my goodness. Raymond's saying we have approximately 1,500 employees retiring this year, and it's important to prevent the loss of implicit information. My goodness, yes. And your organisation has identified that, and hopefully the mentoring is there to address that. So thanks for all that input. You can still keep typing in. I'm going to move on and glance back at the questions and comments shortly. Okay, so here's this model again we're working with. It's called Specify Objectives. We've just been talking about the aims, the high-level aims of mentoring from the organisational perspective, where we look at what is it the organisation really needs from mentoring and what strategic value does mentoring offer. And okay, so this model really will serve you well because it enables you to hone in on where your mentoring will serve real needs. It's also essential to your evaluation, and I'll just give you a heads up. I'll talk about our next webinar at the end, which will be on evaluation. And you can see where evaluation really follows on from what we're talking about today. I'm thinking of actually making this a prerequisite to the evaluation webinar. So I developed this model quite some years ago after I was actually called into a government agency. Now, that government agency had been given a target by the state government at the time to increase women at top levels in that organisation by a significant percentage. Now, then, as sadly now, in government agencies and other organisations, we see a very small number of women at the most senior levels. So the government of the time actually set a target for all government agencies in this state of New South Wales, Australia, to raise that number by a significant percentage within 5 years. So they called me in because they thought what they wanted to do was set up mentoring for entry-level women. Entry-level women. I'm repeating that for a reason, to advance through the ranks. Now, it was a worthy goal, but one that doomed them to failure. Because in the time frame, remember, there was a specific time frame of 5 years. And there was no way that any amount of mentoring was going to progress women at entry level to the very senior ranks in a 5-year time frame. So we had to do a rethink. So this brings me to the next point of this model. By doing this sort of analysis right at the beginning, by using this model and doing a needs analysis, it enables you to focus on the right target group. Now, they were very good-hearted people with very good intentions, and it was only an outsider coming in that said, hang on a minute, think about this target. You've only got 5 years to achieve this. You're targeting entry-level women? No, I'm sorry. You can do that. You can run a program for them by all means, but not to meet this objective. What group do you need to target? Well, you need to target those high potential women near the top. So they're not quite in those senior ranks. They need a bridge to get from where they are. And it's not such a huge leap. It's a smaller step for them. So focus on this target group of women who are nearly there and give them mentoring, because that'll get them across the bridge, across the line. And think about the purpose of the mentoring, and that will let you focus on the right people. So so I'd like you now type in, who are your target group? You've now talked about your organisational needs and strategic value. Now, if you would really quickly type in then, who are your target group to be mentored? So you might call them mentees, mentorees. You might call them protege. They might be the students. Whatever you call them is fine, but describe them to me. And I'll just quickly read those out so we can share. Who are your target group? Type it in.
Okay, good. They're coming in. I won't read names this time because I want to go more quickly. So we've got new hires, newly hired team members, and recently promoted team members. Excellent. So that's targeting the target group. Okay, business startups. Okay, freshmen and beginning students. So you can see we've got a range. Okay, I'll leave you there to type some more in, and I will move on because I want to share with you. We're going to move on once you've got your target group and you know the real purpose of the mentoring, you're getting much clearer on that, then you can specify the objectives. You can identify specific outcomes that you're looking for that will be success indicators and the measures. And of course, this will be the focus of our next webinar on evaluation. So I really quickly want to run through this case study for you where we looked at the aims of a particular organisation. Actually, this is a composite of a couple of organisations I worked with. We looked at the aims. This was a program that was an equity outcome program. So it was really, I can't lie, often the driver for these programs is compliance. Organisations look at what they're required to do by law and say, oops, what are we going to do? Okay, let's put in a mentoring program. So the organisational need was compliance. They had to report their equity outcomes. But when they started looking into this topic, what did they find? There's actually some strategic advantages to them apart from that compliance requirement. They found that they could avoid skill shortages, which are a problem. They could make their rating as employer of choice. They could lower their recruitment costs because if they developed people women already within their organisation, rather than spend a lot of money on recruitment. And they found these statistics, and they're not that hard to find. If you go and ask Mr. Google, you will find plenty of good research, documented studies that show that organisations that have more diversity at senior levels actually outperform those that don't. So there was strategic advantage for them. Once again, they were able to focus. Okay, we're going to focus on high potential women, because that will raise them to the more senior levels, and that's where it's going to make the biggest difference quickest. So we're looking for leverage here. And our purpose, well, to develop leadership. They're going to develop their leadership. So our objectives, we're going to specify. How are we going to, what outcomes are we looking for? We'll have more women in the leadership pipeline. We'll have more women in those senior roles. We'll have greater talent retention because they won't feel like they've got to go somewhere else to look for opportunities. And we should also get more female applications, both internal applications, and if we demonstrate we're a woman-friendly organisation, we'll get more external applications as well. So greater talent there as well. And the measures are pretty easy. We measure before we do mentoring and we measure after mentoring, and that will tell us how we're progressing. So that's a case study. I've got more detail of that on my website, on that page I gave you the link to earlier, where you can download this model and the case study as well. So now I want to mention something else here. So far we've looked at identifying strategic objectives. We're going to go into more detail in a moment about analysing the needs of stakeholders, analysing the needs of the target group, but I want to mention here the importance of engaging stakeholders. Now, what do I mean by stakeholders? And you might have some ideas. And again, you can start typing those in. Who are your stakeholders, in fact? I describe stakeholders as the people who can influence the success or otherwise of mentoring. And they include senior decision makers, people who will be directly involved, and those who may be affected indirectly by the mentoring program. And I'll repeat that, those who may be affected indirectly by the mentoring program. So they might be the managers of the mentors, perhaps, or if you're in an organisation, they might be the managers of the people who want to be mentored. They're people whose interest or disinterest can make or break your mentoring strategy. If you don't get your stakeholders engaged at the planning stage, it may be difficult to get them on board later. And there's my empty bus. So you want to engage those stakeholders. So who do you think might be your stakeholders. Type them in now. I'm just going back because I'm seeing some of those target group. Okay, so Raymond's target group is person with disabilities, immigrants and Aboriginal people. Okay, Jennifer is saying first year female students in STEM, female students enrolled in STEM. Okay, this is our target group. Now I'm asking you to type in the stakeholders, your stakeholders, who could influence your mentoring program. Okay, Kathy's target group are experienced and passionate primary healthcare nurses. Excellent. Okay, got some more first year STEM female students. Okay, I've got, okay, so I've got a question here. And the question is, in cases where we are targeting a group, for example, Aboriginal workers, is it necessary that their mentors be of the same group? This is a good question, and I do a lot of work with Aboriginal people. And in most of the Aboriginal programs that I run, not all the mentors are Aboriginal people themselves. And even when they are, they may not be from the same Aboriginal group. Here in Australia, and I know in Canada, people don't often realise what a huge land mass Australia and Canada are, and how there could be numerous different groups. So just because a person identifies as Aboriginal, two people might identify as Aboriginal, but they might not be from the same Aboriginal group, and their cultural differences may be as different as, say, in Europe. Europe's a large landmass. We obviously recognise the cultural differences between, say, Germany and Italy, or Spain and Croatia. You know, they have different languages, they have different cultures, and it's the same with Aboriginal groups. For non-Aboriginal people, we sometimes forget that. So the short answer to the question is no, they don't have to be Aboriginal. And even if they are Aboriginal, recognise they may not be from the same tribe, if you want to call it that, or cultural group, and they will still have some common ground, just as non-Aboriginal people do with Aboriginal people. You might have to work a little bit harder to help them find their common ground and put their fears at ease as much as you can, and help them find rapport. Okay, good. Going to move on then, because one of the reasons behind this needs analysis process is I like to think of mentoring as something that kind of builds a bridge. And I like to think of it as mentoring as something that will help people get from where they are to where they want to be. So the very first thing we need to do is to describe their current situation and their desired situation. So looking at that example, that case study I used before, what we're targeting, what our objectives are all about, is more women in the leadership pipeline and moving women into senior roles. So if you thought about it, and if you maybe checked with human resource staff, maybe talk to managers and perhaps even a sample group of those female employees, you could probably get a good picture of their current situation, and as well as the desired situation. We've already got the desired situation, moving them into those senior roles. So let's get a good handle on their current situation, what's going on for them right now. So building that picture is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the webinar. But before we do that, let me just check in with you. I'm going to launch another poll. Okay. Now, remembering with these polls, they're anonymous. All we get is the percentages. So up on your screen now, I'm really interested to know, and you can choose more than one. So the question is, When planning our mentoring program, this is for those of you who are running a program already, or even those of you who are in the planning process. What are you doing? Do you have those specified objectives, outcomes, measures, as I described in the previous slide? Did you involve those stakeholders? Did you consult with the target group in any way? Did you analyse needs in some way, or none of the above? Okay, I see the votes coming in now. You can choose more than one. Okay, about half the people have voted now. This is going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to sharing the results with you in just a moment. Just going to give this a few more seconds. And then once we've got these results, we're going to go into the method. Okay, 70%, 75% have voted. Okay, a few more seconds. The vote's coming in. Okay. Interesting results coming up here. Okay, I need to close this off now. Okay, close share. Here we go. So I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to see that 83% of you have actually specified outcomes, objectives, and measures. You'd be surprised how many people I meet who actually have very, very vague ideas. I guess we're talking to preaching to the converted here. Okay, and another 72% involved stakeholders. These add up to more than 100, obviously, because you could choose more than one answer. However, we're dropping a little bit there. 39% consulted with the target group. Still a good number, but lower than I'd like to see. 83% analyse the needs, good in some way. I'd be interested to hear how you actually analyse the needs. 11%, so a minority, none of the above. So that's good. Okay, let's put those away now. And let's get into the method. This is one of the methods I use. It's and some of you may be familiar with the idea of force field analysis, originated, I believe, by Kurt Lewin. So force field analysis, it's a tool typically used in a brainstorming session with a group. So what you do is describe the current situation and the desired situation. So using the example, still working from the case study before, the current situation, we have lots of female employees who aspire to leadership and senior roles. The desired situation is we want to get them in the leadership pipeline. We want to move them into those senior roles. So Kurt Lewin's idea of force field analysis is what you do is you brainstorm what are the driving forces. So factors that support, encourage, or propel people towards the desired situation, and what are the restraining forces? So all the factors, pressures, and issues that restrict progress or prevent the desired situation. So why don't you now really quickly type in just what drive in this case study, okay? So focus on the case study. We're talking about women moving into leadership. What do you think might be some of the driving forces for women who aspire? So what propels them? What inspires them? What have they got going for them? What's helping them to move towards a leadership position? So type those in. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing some of the driving forces as family support, desire for more money, career development, better job and increased salary, resilient qualities and the desire to succeed. I want challenging and meaningful roles. Excellent. And that corresponds to a lot of the ideas that other people have generated, which I've kind of generalized in this list. So the driving forces might include everything that you've said so far: competence, motivation, that's kind of a heading for some of those things that you've said, qualifications, experience, and their own intelligence. They just want to put that to use. What about those restraining forces? We're getting short of time, so I'm just going to put up some of the things. You can type some in. I'd love to see what you're going to say there, and I'll have a look in a moment. One of the ones that has been identified, some people say that women lack self-confidence. That may or may not be your experience or your opinion. Many women have conflicting priorities. Many have poor support, whether it's outside of the workplace or within the workplace. The structure of the organisation itself and the culture of the organisation. So, and I'm sure you could come up with many more. And if we just making sure I have shared and closed that poll. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I hope you're can I just check with you that you are seeing my screen now, the force field analysis slide? Can you put your hand up if you're seeing it? Are you? Oh, good. Okay, cool. Just wanted to check that. Thank you very much. Okay, I was afraid I'd forgotten. I sometimes forget to put away the poll. Okay, so you can see the value of brainstorming these sorts of ideas. And it's something you can't do as effectively in an empty room by yourself. You put people in those seats, you'll get a diversity of ideas, you'll get a rich quality and maybe some things that you didn't even think of. For example, one of the things I know here in Australia that is an inhibiting factor, a restraining factor for women is childcare. Women who have children who either can't get access to childcare or it's ridiculously expensive, that would inhibit them. And you can also see that that's not necessarily a factor that mentoring can do something about. So you want to engage, in my opinion, I think you want to engage your potential participants as well as the other stakeholders and ask them these questions. Now, there's a variety of ways that you can do this. As I mentioned, the force field analysis, if you can get people in a room together, but if you can't, then you may be able to interview people over the phone or online, as we're doing now. I ran a series of interviews with people where I utilised this technology so I could actually easily record what they were saying as well. You can do surveys. If you can design a really good survey and get people to complete it, but you've got that issue of will it cover everything? And in fact, if I can't get people together in a room or online to do a brainstorming session, what I'll often do is do some interviews first and then use the qualitative data I get from the interviews in a survey, and that can be more effective because you get from the horse's mouth the sort of issues that you can then frame the questions around. You can run an information session. So quite often when I've gone into organisations who want to have a mentoring program, and I do this particularly with Aboriginal people, run an information session, which is actually a two-way information. I am providing some information about mentoring and I am gathering information from them, and I ask them what they see as the potential benefits of mentoring after I've described mentoring and after we've talked about what mentoring is and how it works. Get them to come up with what they see as potential benefits and get them to come up with potential obstacles both to mentoring and what we're trying to achieve with mentoring. So you're kind of doing your needs analysis within an information session. And you can also run a planning workshop, and this is something I love to do. Get the stakeholders together, run a planning workshop where we go through a whole range of issues, from what mentoring is to the 4P method of planning to the specify objectives model that I've shown you and to this beginning of the needs analysis process. So just going back to our case study sorry, just one more slide before we go back to the case study. Once you've done your needs analysis, this feeds into your mentoring plan because you use this information to actually describe the mentor role, because mentors want to know what's expected of them. If you've done a good needs analysis, you can very accurately and specifically describe the mentor role. This then helps you in setting selection criteria and selecting appropriate mentors, because if you know what you want them to do, and if you know explicitly what your aims and objectives and outcomes are, you can select more effectively, and then you can brief or train your mentors for that specific role rather than train them for generic mentoring. It also highlights the issues mentoring may not change. So in the case study, we're focusing on women, and there's a reason for that. One, because it's a good case study, but also we're coming up to International Women's Day, and I'm so sad that we're not making more progress. And part of the issue is we focus on what's wrong with women and what they need, where in fact what this needs analysis shows up is that we need to look at organisational structure and organisational culture that actually works against women and prevents them from getting to those more senior roles. And if we neglect to address that, then all the mentoring in the world won't make a difference. So, okay, off the soapbox now and on to mentoring. So it is important, though, regardless of what your situation is, to be clear about what mentoring can do and what it can't do. And if you are, then you're in a position to look at, okay, what else can we do here that will make a difference to these outcomes? Not just because it's really dangerous, I believe, to imagine that mentoring is some kind of magic bullet that's going to solve everything. So it's looking at those other strategies that will make a difference. Okay, so as we come close to the end, I'm just showing you this slide again so that you can kind of think about maybe some of the other strategies that would make a difference. And moving from the case study, moving back to your specific situation, what I'm hoping that you will do is start to look at who you need to involve in the needs analysis and planning. Now, 50% of you online said that you are in the process of planning a mentoring program. So I'm hoping that this is stimulating you to think more broadly about what you need to do and also who you need to involve and what methods you might use. I'm going to ask for some feedback at the end of the webinar about what your key takeaways are and what actions you're going to take. So I'm planting a bit of a seed here. Okay, so once again, here is the model. We've been focusing today on identifying strategic objectives, analysing the needs of the target group, and doing it in ways that actually engage your stakeholders. Get them on board now, and you'll reap the rewards of that later on, because some of those stakeholders are sometimes in a position to derail your mentoring program, and you want to head that off before it starts. Okay, start thinking up your questions. You might want to start thinking about your key takeaways from this webinar. But before I ask you to and respond to that, I just want to let you know our next webinar is coming up on the 10th of April. So just over a month away, and it will, as you can see, build on this foundation, because we'll be looking at how to evaluate mentoring. And in my opinion, this is something you plan right from the beginning, not just at the end of a mentoring program. So in next month's webinar, we'll be talking about what a return on investment, or ROI, return on investment, can you reasonably expect from mentoring. A lot of our evaluation is qualitative, so I'll be talking about, can you put hard measures on soft values, and what and how, in fact, can you evaluate. So I hope you'll watch your inbox for your invitation to that next webinar. And I'll finish the full part of the webinar in the next 5 minutes, but I will hang around for as long as you want to answer your questions and respond to your comments. So I'll come back to Q&A in just a moment. Before we go there, I briefly want to share with you some resources that you may also find useful as you plan your webinar. And I'm guessing by now that you know there's no one size fits all when it comes to planning a mentoring program. You must tailor your program to suit your organisation, your people, and your objectives. So based on years of practical experience, my manual, How to Design and Run Your Own Mentoring Program, describes how you can design and implement an effective mentoring program. In this book, you'll find tools, techniques, checklists that will enable you to develop a program that works. I also discuss the challenges and obstacles to successful mentoring, and there are some reusable templates, worksheets, and checklists. This manual is just $55 Australian as an ebook that you can download instantly. And I'll be sending you some information about this shortly, or you can simply go to my website. It's www.mentoring-works.com, and under the shop menu, you can find the manual, How to Design and Run Your Own Mentoring Program. Or in fact, you might want to take advantage of the Fast Track Planning Pack, and the manual comes as an ebook with that entire package. That also gives you 16 webinar recordings. So if you've enjoyed this webinar, there are 16 more recorded to listen to, and half a dozen ebooks that go with them in a package that includes the manual, How to Design and Run Your Own Mentoring Program, and that is $99 Australian, which works out quite a bit less in US dollars, and I'm not quite sure what the conversion rate is in Canada at the moment. So I'll send you some more information about those products a little bit later on. For now, what I'd like you to do is make sure you get the most value from the hour you've invested in this webinar by writing down for yourself and perhaps typing in and share. And I won't read out names for this, but I will read out if you type in, what's been your key takeaway? What's been the major learning or a key point for you? And what actions, importantly, what actions will you take as a result? And you can also start typing in if you've got questions. I'll be hanging around after the top of the hour if you have more questions. So I'm just looking at what's in my question box at the moment. Okay, so these were some of the reasons. The driving forces were listed there. Okay. Okay, Leanne's asking, will the PowerPoint be available for participants? I am recording the webinar, Leanne, and I will make that recording available for a short time. So you'll be able to go through it, and you can probably speed it up and see the slides that way. The major slides that you need are those models, and they are available to download from the website. If you have a look in your chat box, I've put the link in there for you in a couple of places. So, Okay, so those models are available. So key takeaways. Mentoring builds a bridge, and I need to survey my target group prior to mentoring as well as after the mentorship relationship has been in place a while. Excellent. Because, yeah, if you've done surveys before they start mentoring, you've got the before and you can look at the after and compare the results. We'll talk more about that in the evaluation webinar next month. Key takeaway, importance of needs analysis, both for the mentor and the mentees. Good. Force field analysis provides good insights. Thanks. You're most welcome. I love that technique. It's really easy to use and extremely valuable. You can take it I'm sure you'll find online references to Kurt Lewin's force field analysis, so you can go and research that some more. There are various processes you can use where you actually put a numeric value on those driving and restraining forces, so you can see how much of an impact that might be having on people. So if you put a numeric value on them, and you can do a voting system with that, and or you could turn it into a survey and get a numeric value, and that will show you where you can focus. And sometimes you can choose to work on the driving forces, but you also need to look at those restraining forces. What's in the way? What's preventing them? And is that something that mentoring can do something about? Or do you need to go back to senior management, your stakeholders, your decision? And this is another reason for getting decision makers and stakeholders involved in your needs analysis. If the group produces the restraining factors, the factors working against people, what's getting in the way, what are the obstacles, then you can start to have that conversation and get it on the table. Look, mentoring can do so much, but it's not a magic wand. It can't change these things. If you are serious about getting more women at senior levels, or keeping young women or students in STEM, keeping them in the workplace, then you need to be looking at these other factors and what can we do about those. Okay, key takeaways. Thank you for the webinar. My key takeaway is engagement of broader stakeholders in our mentoring program. Excellent. It will pay dividends if you get more stakeholders involved. My takeaway, consult with the target group. Good. I hope to continue to work with stakeholders and conduct focus groups in order to make sure the program I have designed is benefiting the students and the college. Excellent. Key takeaway, be cognizant of restraining factors which you can control, mitigate, avoid, work with, and merely be wary of. Good insight. Okay, number one, well, okay, maybe not broader, but a broader group of stakeholders. Okay. Key takeaway. You can start typing in your questions too. We have gone over the hour, so I understand if you must leave. But if you have a question you'd like to type in, I'm working through the list and I will hang around as long as you need me to. Okay, key takeaway. Ideas for planning the mentoring program and the involvement of stakeholders. The action that I'm thinking of is to think about conducting the needs analysis. Excellent. Okay. Talk to stakeholders to get aims and objectives clear. Also pay attention to perspectives and potential challenges that stakeholders see. Yeah. You're very welcome. Thank you. Identifying needs of organisation and needs of, yeah, that's a good point. That was right at the beginning. So I'm glad you picked that up. Remembering there are needs of the organisation and needs of the mentee, and you need to do some research into both of those. Okay, yes, definitely attend the evaluation webinar. Yes. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, that's fine. Key takeaway is planning and stakeholder engagement is most important. Thank you very much. I'm going to hang around and see if any more questions come in. So if you do have a question, please type it in. Melissa, I see you have, Melissa, you have your hand up. I'm going to open your microphone. Melissa, oh, hand went down. Okay, so I'll close that up again. Thank you. I was just checking. Okay. Okay, Raymond. Raymond is saying, would Bruce like to share contact information in Calgary? So, Bruce, if you're still there, Bruce, you are there. You've just spoken. Bruce, Raymond, who is also in Calgary, is wondering if you want to share contact details. Excuse me. Okay, so what I'll do is, so Bruce is saying yes, Raymond, and has shared his email address. So let me see if I can just, okay, see if I can copy that. Okay, I'm going to see if I can copy that into, okay. Oh, damn, it's not what I wanted to do. Oh dear, sorry about that. What I wanted to do was actually share that with Raymond, and I shared it with everyone. I'm sorry, Bruce. Please forgive me. And I can't retract it. Oh dear. Okay. So Bruce and Raymond, hopefully you get in contact. Okay. Gee, Francis can't hear anymore. Okay. Okay, so I need to explain once again where the case study is to be found. Okay, up on my screen now, let me make it bigger. Okay, the website is mentoring-works.com. If you then look across, you will see resources. If you go down that drop-down menu, you see mentoring strategy. And on mentoring strategy, this is the page I've got up on screen now. Mentoring strategy, the 4 Ps is one of the models, and then specify objectives, the case study, and have I got specify objectives? Okay, I'll make sure it's up there for you. Okay, but the case study takes you through that. Okay. So Raymond, Bruce is saying, is that Raymond at the city? Is that Raymond at the city? Okay. Now, let's see if I can do this properly this time. No, it's not letting me. Okay. Okay, so what I'll do is offline. Offline, I'm going to share you guys your email addresses. Okay. Thanks, Bruce. Okay. Question. My program has been running for only a year. How do I show that this program is a need and a priority for the college to fund? Okay, so hopefully today's webinar, if you can use the techniques that I've talked about in today's webinar to do that, but come along to the evaluation webinar next month, and when we go through the process of how to actually evaluate and measure results. So in the meantime, what you need to do, if you want to show it's a need and a priority, go to your college's strategic plan. Get hold of the college's strategic plan. It will talk about the needs and the strategies of your college. And also think about your college's pain points. So what are the things that are not working so well? What are its concerns? What are the most senior people in your college worried about in terms of where the college is meant to be heading and what it's doing, and what might be hurting it? So basically, your strategic objectives for the college. What's the college there to do? What are its goals and aims and strategies? And then you need to look for the links between your college's goals, outcomes, needs, and what mentoring can do. So it's kind of today's process, but very much applied to the organisation. I hope that helps, and I hope we'll see you next month on the evaluation webinar. Okay. You're welcome, Joy. Thanks, David. Okay. Thanks, Christine. And thank you, Raymond. I'll wait for a couple more minutes to see. Thanks, Monica. If there are any more questions, okay, we've still got quite a few people on the line, so if you have a question, now's the time. Okay, cheers, Jackie. Thank you. Oh, Raymond's up so late listening to this webinar. So good night, Raymond. Have a good sleep. Oh, thank you, Joanne. I'm glad it was fun for you. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, can't see any more questions coming in, so I think we'll wrap this up. Okay. Thank you, Nansiri. I hope I'm saying your name right. Thank you very much. Okay. Going to wrap this up now. So thank you all very much for participating. I'm stopping